Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Don't be so glad to see me. Yes, thank you so much. Oh my God, you shouldn't have. Stop. Thank you so much. Our next speaker comes all the way from Shark Mob, just a few blocks from here. That's such a long walk, am I right? Shark Mob, as you may know, are sponsoring the happy hour today, and that's at 6 o'clock, so be there or be square, am I right? Enough about that. Let's talk about our upcoming speaker. Erik Nilsson is the character art director at Shark Mob, and he has been active for over 10 years. He has worked on games such as The Division, Blood Hunt, Lake Ridden, and Stellaris, but more recently, Exoborne. And he is here today to talk to you about how in the world you design, build, animate, and then develop exoskeletons. So please welcome Erik Nilsson.
Yeah. Oof, it's always like fucking scary to be on stage. I'm like, ugh. But we're gonna go and we're gonna talk a little about exoskeletons today and exo rigs. And I figured I'll start with a little trailer to give you guys some context to what the hell this is even about. Let's see if this works.
Reborn. Let's finish the fight.
Because after we do this, everything is gonna change.
Cool, very cool. So that is the game we've been working on for the past couple of years, Exoborne. I've been trying desperately today and this week and this weekend to get a couple of years of work into 30 minutes of presentation. So we'll see how I do. If I talk really quickly, it's just because I'm just trying to get through this without going too far over time. So who am I, first of all? So I got a little introduction. My name is Erik Nilsson. I am an art director at Shark Mob. We have 3. I am the one in charge of characters, exos, weapons, robots, all that kind of stuff, which is probably what I dreamt about doing when I was a tiny kid. I am from the start a concept artist, but I love everything too much, so of course I have to work with art direction instead. And I have worked around 12 years with games, with a bunch of stuff that you probably have played at some point. But today we're going to talk a little bit about Exos and Exoborne. A couple of years ago, Shark Mob was working on a new game, and we were in early pre-production land. This game was going to be some kind of extraction shooter game. It was set in a near future, apocalyptic future. And we didn't want to really do the Mad Max thing. We wanted to do something that felt very close to now, something that felt recognizable and relatable, but turned upside down, twisted by forces of nature, extreme climate change, and this kind of stuff. So I think like what we really knew we wanted to do was a lot of verticality, basically, because it's something we did on our previous game, Blood Hunt, which was set in Prague, where you were vampires running on rooftops and parkouring and stuff. And we really liked vertical gameplay, jumping around, being able to shoot and move in 3D space was really cool. And we had a pretty good idea of the environments we wanted to do. Like already, if you look at these concept art from like years ago, they look pretty similar to the end results. But something we had no fucking clue about doing was characters at the time. They were really bland and drab and boring. It was like 50 shades of green army vests and backpacks and poor Last of Us looking characters. And we needed to do something different with them. What they did have that was kind of cool was, again, the vertical gameplay. They had grappling hooks, cool abilities, traversal mechanics, that fit really well in the world, but it was all in your pockets. You couldn't really see it. Kind of boring. Now, at the time, we were kind of working on, as you know, when you work on IPs and games, you sort of build a lot of different pieces parallel, and you build them up, and you start to borrow things, or like suddenly you discover something over here, and you have to be like, oh, that's cool. Why aren't we doing that? And that was the case for our bad guys, Rebirth. They were sort of the sci-fi futuristic faction of the game, and we've kind of made these exoskeletons on them. And that was kind of cool. And we were like, okay, so why aren't we doing that on our player characters? Because it would make perfect sense that in a world where everything is torn apart by this climate disaster, and you had all these this wrecked world, you needed tech to allow you to sort of or equipment to traverse this world. And of course, this futuristic faction would do that. They would develop this stuff. So why wouldn't our players use that? So if we take a little sidetrack, what even is an exo? Exos is like a very kind of loose word. I would say there's about 3 types of exos, if I'm going to be really broad. There's exoskeletons in media. It's sort of like equipment. It's like you're a human and you augment yourself with these, you get these superpowers from this tech. Then you have something like suits, like Iron Man, and they're very, they cover the whole character. You can't really see the human inside. And then you have mechs, big vehicles. So it's kind of like equipment, armor, and suits, or armor and vehicles. The reason why I wanted to do exos was because, again, we're trying to be a bit grounded. We didn't want to go too sci-fi. We wanted you to be able to connect to the human inside the suit or the rig. And we also thought it was just pretty cool looking. And we were like, ooh, there isn't a lot of games that's done this before. I wonder why. It was a little bit of a foreshadowing there. But we decided to do it anyway because, it looked pretty damn awesome. So we made this really kind of ugly proof of concept because we really just wanted to see how does it look and feel running around with an Exo. And it was this really crude, rough prototype. I think we made it in a week or something. And we were like, yeah, okay. I mean, it's not that impressive, but it can definitely be something. It's not quite this, but it's something, But obviously, we wanted to do something that was bigger, more interesting. We wanted it to become like a mainstay of our game, like an iconic part of our game. But in order to do that, we needed to kind of develop on this, because this proof of concept, it was really simple. It was just cheating. It was like we took like a bunch of metal sticks and we just glued them to the different joints or to the different limbs. There wasn't anything connecting them. There isn't even anything here. There is no spine. It's just a fakery. And this is great because it's very cheap and very fast to do. And if you look at a lot of games that do exos, they do something similar where the exos, they don't go very far out because they're being kind of smart and they're trying to like reduce the performance cost. And so they're putting everything really close and they're doing a lot of small cheats. The rig is not actually moving. It's moving with the character in a very kind of basic way. But the drawback of this, the limitation of this, is that you can't make those really cool, big-looking, sci-fi-looking exo rigs. So if you want to make something like Tom Cruise here, if you haven't seen that movie, it's amazing. You need to make an actual like rig. And what we were thinking was there's this really cool feature in Unreal called control rigs, which is kind of like a scriptable rig system. And instead of basically animating first the player characters, like doing stuff, and then we animate the exo rig on top doing stuff, which is a lot of work, what if we just basically animate our player characters like we usually do, and then we drive our exo rig with the player rig that we're already animating? That would be like pretty cheap, pretty fast, pretty efficient. And the control rig would let us do this in theory. So, okay, we know we want to do exos. We know we want to do control rig. We want to try and figure this out. Let's start prototyping a bit. But first, we're going to need a crack team of amazing people. Combination, well, like something I knew because I'd worked a bit on Exos in our previous game, and I'd done a lot of research on this. I knew it was going to be difficult to do this. It was going to be a lot of complicated problems to solve. Rigs are complicated to begin with. The human body is one of the most complicated biological machines ever. You know, you have a lot of cool twists and turns and tendons and muscles, and trying to then have a mechanical structure, robot hugging a person, and having that sort of twist and turn with all of this is going to be fucking pain. So we had this team of people dedicated to this, and it was animators, tech artists, we have a producer team, art team, concept art team, audio team, VFX team, and we would make these kind of tracks of different groups of people all working together in parallel to solve big problems and then communicating a lot and doing an iteration loop and so on. For example, just for simplification, I showed 2 tracks here. We kind of had like an art track that would be like, ooh, cool, let's do all these ideas, let's come up with all these cool rigs we could do. And then we would send that to the tech team and they would tell us, what the fuck are you doing? Are you fucking stupid? Don't fucking do that. And we would be like, okay, why? And then they would be like, well, because because of these reasons. And then we would be like, oh, cool, okay, then we're learning and we can change things and we can improve things. And so there's this really nice feedback loop between people. So we had this cool team. We had a bunch of people all working together, all talking, communicating. We had some amazing producers. We have one of them sitting here somewhere, I think, yes. We were ready to try prototyping. But what was the first problems we needed to solve? Well, first of all, how do we animate this thing? Again, we had the control rig idea, but we haven't tested it out. We also knew that legs, probably going to be fine. You know, the body's probably going to be fine, but the arms are going to be problematic because arms, again, are complex. We have a lot of shooty in our game. We have a lot of grappling hooks and stuff, and so we needed to figure out how are we going to do the arms exactly. There's a lot of mechanics we need to figure out. And also, how big are we going to make these exos? Because, you know, we have doors, we have cars, and we need to figure out how we get an exo through those things. Because our level designers were kind of blocked. They couldn't really build anything until we figured that out. So while all of this was going on, again, everything's happening in parallel and at the same time, we were doing a lot of concept art. We were doing a lot of sketches and thumbnails and ideas, and like way more than I could possibly show in this presentation. And we sort of ended up with, we had a few sketches, like different things we were looking at, but we made this at some point. And we were like, okay, you know, here's a few sketches. We need to start somewhere. We need to start blocking out and testing something. Why not start with this guy? Because he looks kind of weird. The good thing about this design was that, again, originally we had this like really boring sticks on our arms and stuff that wasn't really doing much. But this guy, you know, he had an interesting silhouette. He was pretty big. You know, there was something to him. So, you know, like, okay, if we block him up, we can try out like a size, and we can see if he fits through doors. He also has these big arms and shoulders. Maybe they will block you when you shoot. Maybe you can't see anything because you'll have these things in your way. That's a good thing to try. He also had this really cool feature, which was these free-floating arms. Something we were talking a lot about arms, and if you look at the blue one up there, that's the simple solution. That's kind of what we were doing. You know, it's like you connect it at the shoulder, you connect it at the elbow, you connect it at the wrist, and it will work. You know, it'll be a very simple construction that works really well, but it's very boring from a visual perspective. It's very boring silhouettes. You can't really do much here because you have to constantly tie down back to the original shape. In contrast to that, you know, doing something like the green one, where you have completely free-floating arms, means you can do crazy shit. Like suddenly you can have these, you can have human arms, like going like this and pew pew with your little like hands, and then the real arms are actually holding the gun and stuff. And you could do long gorilla arms. You can do big shape changes. So very cool from a visual perspective. Very problematic from a rigging perspective. Like that's going to be complicated to do, you know. that's why we should try it. Because we're early development, we have some time, let's try some stupid shit. And if it doesn't work out, we can always go with the red option, which is connected shoulder, free, connect at the wrist. And that's probably where we wanted to end up, but let's try some stuff. So we did an ugly ass block out, really quick stuff, just Lego shit. And if you look at this is our first ever Exo we had in the game. And the control rig works. This proved the control rig works. Clearly, it's the player character is driving the Exo. We're not animating the Exo at all, which is a win. The arms are fucking terrible and doesn't work, so let's not do that. Great. We know that. We can eliminate options for us. But, overall, it's kind of impressive. And it looks kind of cool and interesting, it's kind of lumbering. It's a little bit Edge of Tomorrow, which is pretty cool. It's what we wanted. So the next thing we did was a bit more close to what we figured we would end up with. A bit more safe. Still this big lumbering thing, which is good. Still chunky as hell, but it was a lot more realistic to what we wanted to do rigging-wise. It worked as a rough test, and this was more close to the red arms. Cool. Okay, we can do this. The good thing about this is, we solved the arm problem. We knew we wanted to do the semi-free arms. We didn't want to do the free-floating things. We knew the control rig worked. Awesome. We solved those two problems. Now we have a blockout that the animators can test out and work with. We also have a blockout for the level designers and the vehicle team to work with. They can start doing shit. They're not blocked. We have a rough understanding of the max size. We can't go too far from the player or the human, but we can at least do some stuff. We can go a little chunky. The thing we needed to solve now was how do we build these for real? And obviously I'm compressing a lot of this in 30 minutes because obviously we spent a lot of time on this. But yeah, we needed to build a pipeline for real. We needed to build the Exos for real. How do we deliver them on time? How do we deliver them with a group of people, all working? Maybe sometimes we had multiple people working on an Exo. How do they communicate? So pipelines was a big thing we needed to solve. But before we can actually start building them, we need to figure out what we're building, because we knew we wanted Exos, but what kind of Exos? We didn't have a design that was finished. This is probably one of the first things I ever did on a project. Back when we were thinking, okay, can we even do Exos? Are they interesting? Can we make something cool out of them? I basically went in for half a day, did some research, pulled together and made some mood boards, and was like, okay, if we did different classes of Exos, here's how they could look like. We could have a very simple one, that's these simple shins and stuff, very military, very minimalistic. We could do a more Apple-y design with round shapes and asymmetrical shapes, trying to distinguish all of these shapes, all these families from each other. And then, of course, we need a big power loader dude. We need the Edge of Tomorrow dude that's lumbering around. And we need something that I think would be really cool is to have an organic, weird, alien-y, no real, not a lot of metallic, but more soft artificial muscles. I know I've been looking a lot at prosthetics and stuff recently, and soft robotics and stuff, which is a fascinating topic if you haven't read about it. This is the first ever sketches I did on the project as well, really quick, just trying to prove that, yes, they don't need to be army jacket dudes. We don't need to make 10 different green jackets and backpacks. We can make different stuff. We can have different Exos. And I think it shows really well as well that when you do an exoskeleton, it's the full character, it's 50% Exo, it's 50% outfit, basically. Both are important for the overall look. So going forward in time a bit, we were doing a bunch of sketches. We were coming up with some cool characters, but we weren't quite there with the exosuits yet. They were very basic. And now at the time, at some point during all of this, me and Lars and Rodde, the other art directors, we were kind of working on the Rebirth shape language, which were our big bad guys. And we were thinking, okay, well, they obviously built Exos, so let's try and take their shape language and infuse it into the Exos. Yeah, it was kind of cool, but it wasn't quite there. We were getting somewhere at least. So I sat down with all the stakeholders, all the core directors, And I made this rule set, basically. Okay, the Exos will have minimalistic hard plating, kind of like American tanks, because the game is set in America. That also makes a lot of sense from a Rebirth standpoint, because a lot of their tech was kind of minimalistic and simple. They will have reinforced shapes that are kind of spindly and auto-generated, from AI, which was our idea for the lore behind Rebirths, how they build things. And they will have these kind of storm-protected outfits, jackets that can withstand heavy winds, goggles, masks. Okay, and everyone agreed this is cool. Okay, now we have a general idea of what we want to do for our characters. So we sat down, me and some concept artists, and we just worked with that for a week, came up with some designs, and we ended up with this that we thought was, okay, that's a cool character. It's not quite there yet. It's not entirely where we want it to be, but we have a direction. We have a style of character. And everyone agreed, yes, this is cool. So we kind of had our first big Exo. Of course, we wanted to do the big one first because of doors. Again. So we started doing a really rough blockout, and there we go. And just trying it out on a character. I have no idea why he's naked. Just want to say that. I think there was a bug at the time where outfits didn't work. But look at the Exo, it's very cool. And it has these muscles kind of moving on the shoulders. That was how we kind of solved a lot of the shoulder motion. Yeah, the control rig works great. There were some pistons being animated that we did. You can see the arm really, woof, cool how it moves. Very, very nice. And he's naked, I don't know why. Here's a little bit of when we just threw in some materials on it real quick to see how it would look in the game. All right, so we'd done a blockout. We had something a little more substantial, blockout 2.0, that we could work with. And while we were doing that, Roman, who was our concept artist at the time, he sat down, he started refining this design together with me, and he made a ZBrush model that kind of looks like that. Something we learned, and I will go over this later, is that working in ZBrush when you do hard surface models and exos is really good, because you can make a concept art in 3D, then you take the concept art, you bake it down into a really shitty model, and you throw it into the game, and you can try it out real quick. So working with kind of decimated models was a really way to do kind of fast prototyping. So that is a recommendation if you have hard surface stuff. Here's a little video. That first Kodiak now looking more sublime and interesting and angry. This is a little later. We threw in some shoulder pads to make him a bit more beefy. Quite a big difference from the army green jacket dudes that looked a little bit boring. Now we have a cool character. Got in some nice VFX, some nice little extra details and moving parts and stuff. So, it was really cool. Okay, we had one cool Exo. We needed to build more because we had classes in the game. So we started concepting even more Exos. And eventually we ended up with these three. Kodiak, the big tanky guy that we've already built in the center. We had the Viper on the left, which was this, again, muscle fibery, artificial, soft, ninja, assassin-y, sleek-looking thing. And then we had the Kestrel, which is our kind of flying, very simple construction, but then a lot of transformative shapes and a lot of flaps and things that opened. Here's just some images from the concepting process on those two Exos. And something we were trying to do now when we sort of had a little bit of understanding of which Exos we were doing, we had some approved designs, was I sat down with the animators and we worked a lot with posing and VFX, and I worked with the texture team trying to get all the right material feel and decals and all that stuff. And we went to the mocap studio and worked with stunt people to mocap a lot of animations for the Exo. So here we have some of our friends doing the Exo runs, which looks very funny, but also very cool. You got to run very wide if you have an Exo. It's important. Okay. So these are kind of the ones we ended up with in the end. Pretty cool, in my opinion. And yeah, I'm very happy with them. I did a little turntable here. Of the Kestrel, you can see there's like some cool little moving parts. These flap, they open up when you fly and stuff. But most of the Exo is animated with the control rig. And here's the Viper. Very sleek, very assassin-y, very fast. It's missing its blade here for some reason, I don't know why, but it's supposed to have a sword. And I just want to show this, which is like, shows how the Exo, like with and without an Exo, like how big of a difference it does to the character, which is pretty cool. It's a few years of work to get this done, and I'm very happy with the result. I have a little video here showing some of the gameplay. Trying to get very different feel in the different Exos. That was a lot of work. As you can see, we worked a lot with verticality again. Like it was a thing we tried to keep as a guiding light throughout the production. So some stuff that we learned from all of this. Teaching artists to be engineers and engineers to be character artists. This was kind of an interesting thing. Basically, when you're a concept artist, you might just think about what's pretty and what's cool. You might have what I think is essential idea that form follows function, that you should think about what this thing is used for and then design it thereafter. But what you usually don't know is you don't have a deep understanding of mechanical movement, mechanical, like how things actually are shaped and how they interact and stuff in a mechanical system. That's something that a lot of artists had to learn. And on the flip side, a lot of the engineers had to kind of learn how to be character artists. They had to learn about silhouettes and shape and movement and where things should bend. And yeah, it was kind of a really interesting exchange of ideas. Something we definitely worked a lot with, that we learned a lot from, is how do we build a pipeline with scalability and turnaround in mind. Having multiple people working on the same Exo, one person taking the legs, one person taking the arms. How do we create these things, especially if we're going live service at some point, maybe we make more in the future, who knows. We'll need to have a pipeline that lets us create these things quickly. And they're quite complicated to make. So how do we do that? Again, like I was talking about, I think decimated meshes was like a really big time saver. Because what we could do is we make the concept in 3D. Like we do some sketches and stuff, and we can use 2D as an assist, but we do the actual main concept in 3D in ZBrush. And then you can take that and you can like scale it, just skin it real quick and get it into the game. And it's going to be a shit model. Like you don't want to release the game with that, but it's going to help you get approval. It's going to help everyone get alignment. It's going to help everyone get like a sense of how this thing is going to end up really quickly. So that I think was really good, because you can avoid iterations at the end and just do iterations in the concept stage. When you do rapid iteration and prototyping, it's really important to plan for messiness. You have to plan for shit blowing up. You have to plan for, have a buffer having a good naming structure, good Jira structure, having a good production layer is essential. Good communication is really needed, especially on big companies. The control rig, super awesome. The fact that we didn't have to think about animating our exos, we can just animate the players and then drive the exo. And then, yeah, we did some animations on like the wings on the Kestrel or, like different stuff like that. But overall, that was really cool. And you can also take one animation from Kodiak and use it on Viper, for example. It was very cool. You don't have to do unique animation sets. There's a lot of reusability, and it was just a very nice way to work. We had an amazing tech team that made some really good automated tools, not just, like a lot of different skinning tools, for example. The good thing with that is that then you can make changes. You can do a little, oh, fuck, we need to move this thing or change this thing. And we do those changes and we can just automate it. The thing you need to have when you do this is you need to have a really good folder structure or everything falls apart. But that was awesome. Something we learned is exo clipping is horrendous. Animating with exos, you have to keep in mind that you have a big robot hugging a person. And so that needs to move with everything, weapon, like things clipping through weapons. There's a lot of things to think about. And you have to be okay with some clipping. You have to live with it because the players are not going to care that much. But you have to, yeah, it's a balance. Exos are performance heavy. That's probably why people don't really do this, especially in multiplayer games. You essentially are paying for 2 characters for every 1 character because you have a human and then you have a robot. So performance is definitely a big thing to think about. And then I think like a key thing is when you do a lot of rapid prototyping, like we did, where we were like, we have this time frame. We need to make these things in this time frame. We need to figure out how to do it. It's going to be complicated. And we're just pushing things in, trying to do as good of decisions as we can on very limited time. Then when you do that, you need to have a really good team to pick up the slack afterwards. I know we have one person in the audience here that has done a lot of work with that. So you have to think about, and that I think is a thing that applies to all live services. You have to think about, you can't just like try and rush through the game. You have to think about what comes after, because it's going to be half the work, if not more. And I think that's my talk. So any Q&A on this? Q&A or here, maybe?
Oops. Thank you very much. It was really interesting. I have one question because I'm a game designer, so I want to ask, would you be so kind to describe briefly how was your interaction with game design team? Because it looks like lots of things needs to be decided, and who picks the decisions at what point?
Yeah, this is actually really good that we're bringing it up because it's one of those things that I forget to bring into the presentation. I think one of the biggest challenges when you work with a game like this, there's going to be a lot of iteration on game design. There's going to be a lot of changes. I think that was a huge thing we needed to work with. And I cut 2/3 of this presentation to just make it on time. And in there was a bit of that. We basically didn't know all of the game design things. We didn't know what was going to happen. So we needed to make a system on the Exos that would allow us to react to game design changes. Most of the stuff, it's kind of fine. You want to say, oh, he's going to jump faster or higher. I mean, we don't really need to care about that. That's just happening in the code, in the game design. But, oh, he's going to have new abilities, for example. Suddenly, we can't just put like a cannon on his shoulder. So we built kind of this system. I don't know if I can find, yeah, you can kind of see it here. On her arm, there's like a gadget. We basically built this rail system. So we have 4 rails. We have 1 rail at the top, 1 rail at the bottom, and then we do that same. We have 1 slot reserved for melee devices. We have 1 slot, and then we have some slots reserved for like ability devices. Because we knew that they were going to want to make a lot of abilities. They didn't quite know what they were going to do. You also want to do feedbacking and game testing. So just being kind of, if you know you're not going to have all the answers, then be modular. Have like a, work with your art team, work with your game design team to figure out a good solution so that you're scalable. Anyone else? There maybe. Then I know we have one person over there as well.
Hello, hello. Great talk, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, did you know the amount of content when you were in the design phase? Because some of these concepts I can see maybe take minus the head, maybe 3 weeks. Another concept looks like double the time, if I'm going to estimate it.
No idea.
Yeah.
On the concept. And we didn't know anything. Like you figure things out, especially when you're building an IP at the same time as you're building a game. It's madness because you have no framework. You have nothing to lean on. So we didn't know anything, and we just had to figure it out as we went along and tried to think future-proof. This needs to go into live service. Keep that in mind. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Okay, last question.
Hi, hello. First and foremost, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
As someone who has also worked on an extraction shooter with weather-based mechanics, I really appreciate the effort. I would like to know a bit more about the challenges that you faced on multiplayer and the part with the exos, and what were the main hurdles, and potentially some pointers on how you solve those.
It's kind of like a big topic, I guess. But if we're talking about performance, I mean, that was a big hurdle because, again, we're paying for two players per one player, basically, with the Exos. So I think like trying to work on optimization a lot was like a big thing. Otherwise, it wasn't really that big of a difference, I would say, because it's still characters running around. How they look like doesn't really matter that much. But I think like having worked on 2 multiplayer games with verticality and movement, I think a big problem we had in Bloodhunt was that because we had a lot of verticality and a lot of movement and went very fast, the skill ceiling was very high. So if you're a noob and you come in, you're going to get whacked like that. So you need to think that, you need to keep that in mind. And that's why I think when we did Bloodhunt, it was set during night because you're vampires. There's like a lot of problematic things with that. This time around, we took the things we liked, which was verticality and movement, and we try and work with having bigger sight lines, having a little bit of slowdown, having more abilities that let you do different things so that you have different roles. And because it's an extraction shooter, you don't have to fight either. It's about getting in, getting loot, getting out. It's not like a battle royale. So the skill ceiling is a little lower in that sense. But yeah, I would say it's about the same as any other multiplayer shooter, like the same problems. Hopefully that answers your question. And that's a wrap. Okay, thank you everyone.